and good afternoon. My name is Keelan Koning. I'm the Communications Coordinator for 3CSN, and I also am an English instructor at Cal State Northridge, and we're just super grateful for those who are here. And also, we're just extremely excited because this is our first leadership spotlight from our facilitator learning community, learning how to be a wonderful facilitator and all of those good moves and such. And if you want to know more about that, there is information on our 3csn.org website, and we can also talk afterwards if you'd like. So without further ado, the title of the Leadership Spotlight, Beyond Team Building, Unique and Creative Ways of Deepening Relationships in Learning Assistance. And so Megan and Minar, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Minar. Thank you so much for taking the time to be at our workshop today. And I'm actually going to share my screen because part of introductions, we're just doing a little icebreaker activity. And are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I'll start since, I'm already talking. My name is Minar Hijaz. I work at Chaffey College. I'm an instructional specialist for one of the success centers, and we're going through like so many changes now, so I won't say which one. And for the icebreaker question that I want everyone to answer, and I'm going to answer myself, the first place you're going to go once quarantine is over. I'm going to go get a massage because I'm like so tense. I've literally been like bribing my family to give me massages, and I'm using like this like machine that my friend got me, but it's still not the same as actually going to get a massage. So that will be the first place I visit or go to, I guess, once this whole quarantine is over. And I'm going to let my colleague Megan now introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Keebler, and I'm the faculty director of the supplemental instruction program at Chaffey College. So I run the SI program with the SI leaders, which is just another form of learning assistance. Let's see, the first place I want to go is just like out. Like I want to go like out of state. I like to travel, and my daughter and I had this big spring break hiking trip planned in Arizona and Utah, and we had to cancel that. And so I don't know if we can, recreate that entire trip, but just like get the heck out of Dodge, go to another state, and hike and just be sort of separate. So that's my goal.
All right, I see Alan on here. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and answer these questions?
Yes, Alan Honk from Santa Monica College. I teach math. And first place is probably New Orleans. We're scheduled to go there spring break and it's canceled.
Nice. Ooh. That's awesome. Megan and I actually were just there. When? October?
October, yeah.
Yeah, right before all this happened. So it's awesome.
Yeah. It was really amazing, yeah.
And then Keelan, did you want to run through the questions too? I know you introduced yourself already, but maybe.
Definitely. Oh, this is a hard one though. So I'm Keelan Koning. I work for 3CSN and for Department of English at CSUN. And the first place I'm going to go once quarantine is over. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about what Minar was saying because as I wrote in the chat, actually burned my neck with the massage tool, like one of those shiatsu ones. It was the kind that you put your arms in and you can pull on it. Well, I was just like really digging in there and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I realized like I was very burned. So I think that the massage is probably going to be something that I will be doing from a professional rather than a tool that apparently I'm not licensed to use.
Awesome. Alrighty, so we're gonna kind of get into like, I guess, the meat of this workshop by doing an activity that we're gonna model, and it's called Story of Your Name. Megan, did you want to talk a little bit about background?
Yeah, so this is sort of a modification of an activity that Minar and I learned while we were being trained to facilitate the multicultural training on our campus. So on our campus, Anybody who wants to serve on a hiring committee has to complete this multicultural training. And so Manar and I actually were fortunate enough to be trained to facilitate those trainings. And so this was an activity that we learned there and that we use in those multicultural trainings. You know, I won't go too much into why we think it's really beneficial and why we think it's a really deep and meaningful activity, because I think we're going to kind of see that and talk about it. But just as a little bit of context, this is something I typically hire around 20 to 25 new SI leaders every semester. So we have a couple days of training just for them. And this is an activity that I do on the very first day. It's pretty much the first activity after like coffee and everybody settled down and all of that stuff. This is kind of the first thing that we do. It doesn't have to be done with people that you don't know, but in this case, we're going to sort of use it that way to get to know you, and that's how we've used it in the past, but it can be used really at any point in your interaction with people.
Yeah, and as Megan mentioned, you know, we're continuously in our different programs hiring people on a regular basis, and we found that this activity allows people to kind of share a little bit about their identity without being really explicit about the way that you're asking those questions, because sometimes it could be hard to like ask people, especially if it's a room of people who don't know each other or they're new, to ask them like, you know, what's your background? But this gives people an opportunity to share some of the things that they want to share, and then also get to know like their colleagues. So I am going to start by demonstrating, and I'm
going to model what the listener would do in this instance, which is literally just listen. So you'll notice that I won't say anything, but that's sort of part of the activity, is that whoever the listener is in this pair, this isn't the time to sort of jump in and go, oh yeah, me too. Oh, I totally relate to that. This is really just a time to be quiet and actively listen and allow your partner to share uninterrupted.
Thanks. So I pulled up some questions that you can consider when you do your name story. These are suggestions only. If there's something else about your name that you want to share that you find is better than these questions, feel free to do that. I'm just going to kind of share what comes to my mind when I think about my name. So my name is Manar. It's actually pronounced Manar in Arabic. So the R is rolled similar as it would be like in Spanish with the R's. It's funny because I was in a meeting the other day and it totally caught me off guard because the person running the meeting, who didn't, I'm pretty sure he wasn't Arab, his name was Jason, but when he called my name, he rolled the R, and I totally was just like, I was like, wait, should I introduce it in an Arabic way? Or like, I just kind of freaked out for a second, and I was not expecting that, but it always makes me think about that when I think about pronunciation. My family actually, a lot of my family and close friends call me Manny. And that was just a nickname that they gave to me. I didn't really choose it, but I don't mind it. My name means lighthouse in Arabic, which I always felt, you know, growing up, people would always say that's really indicative of your personality because you're talkative and, you know, you're personable. But it's funny because I'm finding myself to be more introverted the older I get. And part of that is because I've learned to be a better listener, and I'm still working on that. And so I'm always like thinking like, am I no longer fitting that definition of my name? I was named by my mom's cousin or friend. So my mom comes from a really big family. My grandfather had, like, he was one of 12 children. So like the joke is that everyone in our town in Palestine is my mom's relative, because like literally almost anyone we run into in the street, my mom's like, oh, that's my cousin, to the point where like I don't always know if it really is a relative of my mom or if it's just she's saying cousin when it's her friend. So my mom did not name me. So I always was under the impression that Manar was a name only given to like it was a female name. And then I met somebody, and as soon as I introduced myself, he kind of looked at me and he's like, that's a guy's name. I was like, okay, I guess. So that was kind of like interesting. After that point, I had met both men and women who have the name Manar, but I would say it's probably more so women who have it. My last name is Hijaz, which is originally an area that encompasses like Saudi Arabia and some other neighboring countries. Like that area used to be called the Hijaz. I have no idea why that's my last, well, it's a tribe name, but I don't know where it came from, having to do with that area. And I always ask my family and they don't know. But my actual family last name is Milbis, which confuses people, because like legally on everything, my last name is Hijaz. So Milbis is the family name and it's part of a tribe, which is Hijaz. So technically my current last name is my tribe name, not my actual family relative. So not everyone in Hijaz relates to me. So that's always kind of weird, you know, living in the United States and having that. I really like my name. I always felt very fortunate, you know, being of Palestinian background, that I didn't have a difficult name to say in English, because I know a lot of people who have had really hard names, and when you say them in English, they sound really horrible in the sense that they sound like something they shouldn't sound like. So I'm always like, okay, thank God, like my name is not hard to pronounce, and it's like people can't, you know, make fun of me. Like I was never bullied for my name, but my cousins always were with their name. So I always felt really grateful, and for that reason, I did like my name a lot. And yeah, that's kind of about it in terms of my name story. Megan, would you like to do yours?
Sure, and I've done this activity with Minar multiple times, and I feel like every time we do it, I learn something new. So I don't think I knew that it was pronounced Minar with a rolled R. So now I'm going to get a chance to practice my Spanish pronunciation and try to refer to her as Minar from now on, because I didn't know that. So that was interesting to learn.
Wait, did you use Alan?
We did.
Okay, continue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're just gonna move forward. So my name is Megan Keebler. The pronunciation is, I think, pretty common. I think some people do go by like Megan. We have a Megan at our college, so it happens. But you know, other than that, it's pretty much sort of pronounced how it's spelled. So my name was chosen by my mother, my first name. I'm the second of 4 children, and a lot of people have these like really powerful origin stories. My mom, I was named after both a character from a miniseries in the 80s and a koala bear. So there was a miniseries in the 80s called The Thornbirds. I don't know if anybody's old enough to remember that. I obviously didn't see it when it was sort of coming out, but I remember reading it and seeing it later in life. And there's a character in there, and I believe her name is actually Margaret, but she goes by Meggie or Meg. And so my mom really liked that. But she was kind of going back and forth between, like, should it be Margaret? Like, what should it be? And then she went to the San Diego Zoo, and there was a koala bear named Megan. And so she said, okay, that's it. We'll do Megan. So I was named after, you know, a koala bear and a heroine in a somewhat bodice-ripping miniseries. So my name is spelled the most simple way that it can be spelled. So, you know, I'm kind of in the club with, you know, if I meet other Megans, I'm like, how do you spell it? And they say the simple way. And I'm like, oh, the right way, right? No extra E's or A's or H's or anything like that. So it's sort of the straightforward way. I don't really have a nickname. I do have one friend from high school who calls me Meg. My mom used to call me Meggie. I did not like it. So I do not like to be called Meggie now. But, you know, Meg is fine. It just so happens that, I don't know, it's a short name. I don't really tend to have nicknames. So that's just kind of what I go by. My name to me, it feels very indicative of like the 80s. I don't meet too many Megans that have been born, you know, more recently than 1990. But I mean, I like it fine. I don't dislike it. The other thing that's unique about the spelling of my name is that my surname at birth was Gord, G-O-A-R-D, which has 5 letters. My mother was Linda, my father was David, and so they named my older sister Sarah with an H, and so then with me, they didn't really know if they wanted to go with a theme of 5 letters, but they just sort of decided, hey, this is a name that we can spell in 5 letters, so it became sort of a theme. So my sister Sarah with an H, I'm Megan 5 letters. And then I have a younger sister named Emily, and then my poor younger brother, whose name is Adam, but who has an extra D in his name, just to kind of fit the theme. And so that's another, also my mom, she likes to be, she thought she was being real cute. Again, my surname at birth was Gord, and my middle name is Elizabeth. And so my initials were, for a time, MEG. I have not been married for quite some time, but I chose to keep my, my married name because it's my daughter's name, and because it's a name that I got married very young, which is why I wasn't married very long. And Keebler is the name that I got my degrees with. Keebler is the name that I really established my career with. And so it's a name that I have chosen to keep. I don't love it. I do get a lot of jokes, a lot of elf jokes, a lot of cookie jokes, although I think the younger people don't tend to do that because they don't watch commercials anymore. So it's slowly dissipating. But that is the story of my name. Yeah. So, Keelan, would you like to share with us the story of your name?
Sure. Okay, so first of all, that was really cool. Like, I learned some cool things about the two of you. Okay, but I'm not supposed to say anything more, right? Okay, so my name means, well, it depends on who you ask. It's sort of Irish, but my father says that I was named after that it's the first plank of a ship because he was in the Navy. So keel and that were pulled together. My mom says that I was named after two of my great aunts. So Keel and Anne. So it just really depends on who you ask and how colorful the story is becoming. I think that there isn't really a specific, when you look it up, like it's hard to find because usually it's with two E's. And my dad actually at the hospital took one of the E's out, which gets a little interesting. Okay, so who chose my name? I think it was a combo of both of my parents. I already answered the named after someone. Then the origins, slightly Irish, I guess, or Navy-ish. I have no idea. It is a unique spelling. It's so hard for people to pronounce. I get called all kinds of things like Keelan or Karen sometimes, Caitlin a lot, which is a lot of extra letters that are nowhere near around there. So you just don't know what's going to happen. And there's a kind of a special feeling that comes. I think that's why it's so important to me to try to pronounce everyone's names properly, because I know what it's like, you know, and then when you hear someone say it properly the first time, there's just this feeling that comes, like it's kind of special. So I do have many nicknames over the years. So I was nicknamed Birdie when I was little. Because I love to sing, and I guess I made these little chirping noises when I was a baby. So Birdie Keeley was actually my name for many years until, well, not many, but like the first years of my life until I went to elementary. And Key, I get called Key a lot. So that's kind of the story of my name.
Hello. Is it okay if I do my last name? Because I don't really know too much about my first.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
We did, before you came, we talked, like when I did mine, I did a little bit about my last name as well. So yeah, that works.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So my last name's Balduzzi. I don't know the exact definition, but I know that it's from Italy. My family is on the border of Austria and Italy, where they came from in the 1920s. So that's where my last name originates from, and kind of like who I am. And I guess I can answer some of the first name questions as well. So I think both of my parents, they came to an agreement about Jared. They like the name Jared because of a show back in the early 2000s called The Pretender. the main character of the show's name was Jared. I don't remember his last name. I never personally watched it. I just thought it was kind of cool that they named me off of one of their favorite characters. And let's see. Any nicknames I had? Growing up, they used to call me. There's a really kind of embarrassing one. They used to call me Jer Bear. Never personally a big fan of it, but it just kind of stuck with them for a while when I was younger. Overall, I definitely do like my name. I like how unique it is, and I think it's better than having a name like Michael. There's nothing wrong with Michael. It's just I wouldn't want to be in the room with two Michaels and my name being Michael, because then it'd get a little confusing who exactly they're talking about. So I do like the uniqueness of my name, and I think that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're, kind of changing this on the fly just because of we are originally going to put you all in breakout rooms and then have you, introduce yourselves and do the name story. But since we did it all out in the open, I'll kind of go through some of the things we were going to talk about. What are some things that you kind of realized from doing the activity, from listening to colleagues answer their own questions about their names? And I apologize, Jared, I know that you came a little bit, you may have missed some of the stuff we talked about, but it's okay. It could, you could answer in terms of, for you, how you felt sharing your own name. Megan, am I forgetting anything else that we want them to consider?
I think this is just sort of a freewheeling discussion, so we can talk about what we learned from each other, maybe something we thought about for ourselves that we hadn't, but also just sort of how did that activity feel for you? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Did you feel vulnerable? Did you like it, right? So just kind of a freewheeling discussion about kind of just thoughts and feedback about the activity itself. Because this is going to be the bulk of our, this activity is sort of the bulk of our training today. And so we really want to dig in and think about how does this make us feel as participants before we move into sort of the facilitator side and think about how would we actually run this activity with a group of students or colleagues. So Jared and Keelan will sort of have you be our participants. So, feel free to share your thoughts to your comfort level.
I wasn't sure how exactly to answer some of these questions, but the questions are relatively simple, and I just felt they were kind of more like engaging. I feel it's like easy to kind of talk about yourself for other people, but I really do enjoy hearing about like other people's backstories a little bit. And I think it's very engaging for the most part, and it kind of helps create a sense of community for maybe strangers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jared. Yeah, we had sort of talked in the beginning about how we usually do this when we're training our tutors or SI leaders when they're meeting each other for the first time. But we also do this when we are working with colleagues that we know their name, but we sort of find that we get to learn a little bit more deeply about them through doing this activity. So let's see, do we have another participant who's joined?
Yep.
Because if so, we can, Lindsay, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are
you?
She's our Girl Friday right now.
Good. Thank you so much. Yes. So actually, I think, Lindsay, not to put you too much on the spot, but I know that you're pretty good on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to sort of, we're working on an activity called Story of Your Name.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have all sort of introduced ourselves and given a little bit of background about the story of our name. And so if you would be comfortable, and these questions are here to sort of guide you. You don't have to answer all of these, but just sort of consider them as a guiding sort of framework to tell us a little bit about the story of your name, if you're comfortable with that.
Yeah, so
That's actually something I've asked my parent recently. And my parent really liked having names that were not popular during that time. So I know that both of them decided to choose a name that was just unpopular at the time. So I was born in 96. So my name wasn't showing up that often. In particular, the spelling with the E instead of the A was even less popular. So that was one way that they kind of chose my name. And I have no idea what it means or like where it comes from. I don't think that the etymology was really that important to them. They just liked kind of the flow of my name. And so yeah, that's kind of a little bit about it. My name is pronounced, as you would imagine, Lindsay. And in terms of nicknames, most folks just shorten it. So they'll call me like Linz or Lynn, whatever, whatever they choose. But it's not that long a name, so I don't have that many nicknames around it. So that's a little bit about my name.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lindsay. And just to kind of give a little bit of context, again, as to what we were planning on doing, and what we typically do is we do break folks into pairs, and then when we come back as a large group, we actually have our partners introduce one another. And so, given that Lindsay has just joined us and Jared missed a little bit at the beginning, I'll kind of give just a brief recap of how I would introduce Manar in this situation, because I heard her name story. I've heard it a few times, so I have some things that I can share. So this part, when we share out, is always brief, as you can imagine, because sometimes we'll have 20 or 30 participants. So we will sort of limit it to 1 minute or maybe 2 minutes, depending on the time we've allotted for the activity. Also, just kind of raise the hand if I start to lag too much. I know my internet's not super great, so I'll try to kind of wait for folks to catch up if that becomes a problem. So I'll just sort of introduce you all to Manar. I just learned today that her name is actually pronounced Manar with a rolled R. That is the way it is. That's the Arab way to actually pronounce it. And so this is the name that the story of how it came to be is it was like either a friend or a cousin of her mother, I believe, that named her, although she says her mother has so many friends that are cousins or cousins that might be friends that, it's a sort of actual role of that person is a little bit in question. She shared with us that she likes her name. She likes that it's easy to pronounce in English, so she doesn't get too many mispronunciations. And she, let's see, what else? She shared that she always sort of thought it was of a girl's name because she identifies as a female and it's her name. But she did meet somebody at one point who said that's a man's name. And she was like, oh, okay, I guess some other people go by that. She said her family does call her Manny sometimes, so that is one nickname that she has. And yeah, again, she sort of likes it. It's kind of simple and easy to pronounce, and so that's Manar. And so I would introduce her to the group, and we would kind of get to know each other through hearing about our names from our partners.
And we also, thanks for introducing me, Megan, again. We also talked a little bit about how, and that was kind of when you came in, Lindsay, how this activity made us feel, like whether or not we liked it. What are some things that you thought about when hearing other participants or when you were introducing yourself? Jared mentioned like that he felt a little bit vulnerable. And I actually appreciate that you said that because one, it's, it's very much true and apparent. And I think two, the beauty of this activity is it gives the participant the opportunity to share what they want to share. And that's why we're always very explicit about saying, like, here are some guiding questions, but feel free to use whatever you want. That way, maybe there's something more personal attached to one of these questions that somebody wouldn't want to share. And then I really like that you said that it made you feel like a sense of community. I think that's like kind of one of the major points of doing this activity. Did anyone else, Lindsay, did you want to add or share to how you felt doing this activity, or just anyone else?
Yeah, sure. I think it's good to have some guiding questions that don't just stem around origin, because initially when Megan was like, share your name, I immediately like panicked and was like, I don't know if I know anything about my name. Like, I don't know where it came from. I don't know if there's a specific like association to a particular ethnicity, if there's a meaning, like, so I really like that your guiding questions were open, and it allowed me to choose kind of what I wanted to talk about, even if it was just that I like my name, this is how you pronounce it. I don't really know that much about it. I could have responded with just that, because I've done similar activities to this one, and it can be really alienating when there's only like, what's the origin of your name? It's like, I don't know. That's really, it puts people in an awkward position. So I love that there were so many questions, and I got to choose which ones I wanted to answer. So yeah, really, really welcoming and really lovely.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Keelan, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share about how that activity went for you?
Yeah, this is actually something that I really enjoy doing with my students. And I believe that Jared did this on the first day of class too, right? So, as I don't know, the name, there's a lot that's attached to a name. And I like the fact, now it's interesting because I did not read the questions. I felt like as a reader, I felt like I needed to answer all those questions. So I was like, okay, like going through them. But I really appreciate the fact that that we wouldn't have to answer some of these things, like, do you like it, or maybe, that's something that you wouldn't be as comfortable in the first day, but maybe you would. Like, I totally, I hated my name until I was such and such age, right? So yeah, I think it's a very nice way of bringing students together. And I think a lot of times that, and people in general, right? You said that you use this for interviews and such, right? Is this part of it? Yeah, I know you use it for tutor training.
Yeah, not for interviews, but like kind of in that beginning of getting to know people we have hired. It's an activity that we'll do with them, like a relationship.
Yeah. I think it's very good for that. Although the nicknames could get a little
Yeah.
We probably are going to hold back on some of our nicknames.
I'm like, oh, we should do this in interviews. That would be really cool. What we found is that it is a really sort of quick way to get a little bit deeper than superficial when we're sort of needing someone without asking these really prodding questions like, what's your ethnicity? What's your ethnic background? For me, my name isn't really connected to my ethnic background, so I don't really share about that, and that's okay. For other folks, their names are really deeply connected to their heritage and their family and their ethnicity, and that gives them a chance to share that. Another benefit to this is when you are meeting a big group of people, for me, when I'm hearing the story of my new SI leaders' names, this really helps me to remember their names, which is great because there's a story attached to it. And so it always kind of helps me to recall it. And then we do focus very heavily on pronunciation. So we will double check and say, wait, how is that pronounced? Make sure that we all practice it if it's something that, maybe we might struggle with. Also, as a program, we create name tags for folks based on the names that they give us, in the interview process. But during this activity, I'm always furiously writing down you know, when somebody says, actually, I prefer to go by my middle name, or I prefer to go by my nickname. And then, you know, during the lunch break, I'll run off and print off new name tags and give them new name tags before the end of the day. So it's also a really good way of finding out how they like to sort of be referred to, but also showing them right off the bat that we respect that we are going to, we're going to use the name that they have chosen and that they prefer. So Manar, how do you feel when you do this activity, either as a participant or a facilitator?
I really like it. And I actually have found that, I don't know why, when someone else is introducing themselves, I always like think about my own identity. And like, I start to like, Jared, when you did your last name, like at first when I saw your last name, I don't know why, I was like, that kind of sounds a little bit like it has an Arab like ting to it. Then you said it was Italian. I was like, okay, I was totally wrong. But like, I was just in my head, because we do that a lot of times, right? We look at the world through our own lens, our like own experiences where we grew up. And I really like that about it, because one, you get to learn new things about people and their background and like who they are, but then also you get to kind of relate that a little bit to your, you know, self and your name. So I really, really enjoy that aspect of it. And I always find myself like saying like, I wonder how that name would sound in Arabic, or like, how would you say Lindsay in Arabic, or like, would it, and then like, I start to think about like spelling too, right? Because there are letters that don't really exist in the English language that exist in the Arabic language, and vice versa. So you'd have to put like a similar letter, but then that would change the pronunciation. So I'm always thinking about like my own identity and like language, and, you know, when other people are introducing their names. And that's something that I've always really enjoyed about this activity. And not to mention just like learning things about people who otherwise may have not been given that opportunity. And Megan, like you mentioned, for a lot of like students, or, you know, whether you're in a classroom or you're in learning assistance and you're like hiring people, you know, sometimes they don't really have the opportunity, like, because they'll go based off of the name that they have legally that was selected for them. And it's not always the name that they want to give themselves. And they won't really say anything, like, because unfortunately, a lot of times instructors will kind of just go down that list and read off the names. And I, you know, when I've done this, even with students, I always say like, whatever name you want to give yourself, like that's the name that, you know, you should share. And then I'll usually go in and like change, you know, if they'll say the last name, I'll be like, okay, so that's not the name they go by. It's this one. So it's a good way of being able to give, whether it's, you know, tutors or apprentices or your colleagues or students, the opportunity to do that without explicitly saying like, is that the name that you want to go by? Like, do you want to go by Jennifer? Like you just put them on the spot, you know? So that's, you know, something that I really have always enjoyed a lot about this activity. And then also what you mentioned, Megan, earlier, that you always learn something new. I mean, Megan and I have known each other for a while and we're friends, but I feel like whenever you do your name, I learn new things. And, you know, you mentioned the same about when I do mine. So it's a really good opportunity to both improve relationships with people that you already know, and then also build on new relationships with people that you just met. So that's always been like a really great thing about this activity, I would say. And it's super simple too. Like it's not, you know, you're not having to like overthink anything. And for the most part, people can participate on the fly. They just like kind of get some like look at the questions for some ideas, and then they share their name. So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of deceptively simple, right? Because it seems like it's just, oh, tell the story of your name. But so without asking about your family, without asking about your background, without asking about your preferred name, it's sort of kind of just sort of comes out. And I like what you said, Manar, about sort of finding out about their preferred name, but not asking them just right off the top is how you want to be referred to. So it's because I will sort of ask those questions as we're introducing one another, but at that point we've really kind of warmed up and just sort of saying, okay, you know, asking sort of follow-up questions like, how is it pronounced? And I find really heartbreaking. So often the response is, oh, it doesn't matter. I answer to anything, right? And that's because folks with names that are hard to pronounce are just so used to having them mispronounced that they're just like, you know, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I'm always like, no, how do you pronounce it? I want to pronounce it the way you pronounce it. And same thing with asking, okay, is that the name you want on your name tag? They'll say, oh, it doesn't matter. And I'll say, no, you know, whatever name you want to have on your name tag, you know, that's the name that you should have. And so I think they really appreciate it, and they're even resistant to it at first, not in a negative way, but just they're just so used to being like, oh, it doesn't matter if you say, you know, yeah, my name's Keelan, but if you say Caitlin, I'm going to just assume that you're probably talking about me because you don't know how to say Keelan or whatever, right? And so it's just a way to sort of affirm them and let them know, like, no, we want to know who you are. We want to know you, and your name is so much, it's such a fundamental part of your identity that this is a really quick way to get there, right? Without having these questions that are like, what do you think the relationship between your name and your identity is? How deep do those roots go, right? It's just this very like, tell us a story. And often those things kind of come out, but also sometimes they don't. And so some people aren't comfortable sharing at that level yet. And so they'll just say, this is how it's spelled, this is how it's pronounced. My mom picked it out of a baby name book. Nice to meet you. And that's fine too. It doesn't have to be, you know, earth shattering.
Alrighty, so I know that, you know, we're all kind of in different areas and have different backgrounds in terms of like what we do. So we're gonna do a think, pair, share. I'm gonna, my little Zoom thing is in the way. So if you need more than 5 minutes, feel free to take it, because we thought that we'd have a lot more participants and that we would only have 5 minutes. But you know, if you need more time, don't worry about it. So take some time to think about this activity, and then how you would use it in your own work or in your own background, or in, you know, what you do every day. Could you use it with other students? Could you use it with a colleague? You know, any area that you can think you can adapt it and kind of apply it to your own work or what you do on a daily basis. Think about that, and then just like jot some ideas down once you've thought about it, and we'll give you some time to do that. I'll give you about a minute more to wrap up your thoughts. Alrighty, so Jared and Lindsay, we're gonna go ahead and put you in a breakout room. And then once you're in there, just kind of talk through some of the stuff that came up for you when you were doing this think, pair, share.
Minar, how many minutes should we put him in for?
5?
Let's do about 10. So you can talk about the activity, but also, you know, talk about your responses. So you can share with each other how you think, and it will be interesting to see, like as students and tutors, how you think you might adapt this, maybe even to a one-on-one environment. So we'll give you some time to just kind of share your ideas and maybe even give each other feedback, like, oh, that's really great, but maybe you could try this. So we'll give you a little bit of time kind of on your own. And then when we bring you back, we'll have you kind of share how that discussion went for you, if that makes sense. All right, so can I get a
All right, let's go.
Up or a hand raised, or are we good to go?